Hello. We are me from Bali, lady from New York, Tamia from Colorado. They are both previous horizontal guests. Today we'll be dancing a little bit, obviously, and we'll be talking about relationshiping, what you want, what you really, really want. And dancing. Let's just start out by a little more dancing.
Everything should start with dancing. Hi, lady. I haven't met you, but I listened to your episodes of Horizontal with Lila, and I'm in love with you. So,
God, I feel like this vulnerability hangover.
Oh, good. Oh, I didn't.
Lady, yours as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm
I need
such
to
a
watch
fan.
yours. I need to hear yours as well. Show us your shins again. There's different body parts appearing.
Knees
and shins.
there's no internet in my house right now, in my villa, and so I came to it's basically like a beach club without the beach. And so here that's where I'm broadcasting from.
It looks amazing. I just want to be surrounded by umbrellas like you are right
Yeah,
I know,
not the rain kind, but the sun. The present that I need an umbrella. Oh.
It feels good. I am ready to launch in. So I thought we'd
Sorry,
what?
Samia. I was wondering if Samia's in Colorado. You said Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
She's in Colorado. I was like, I am not in New York.
I am in New York.
I was in New York yesterday morning, and now I am back in Colorado.
Nice.
So I thought we'd begin by talking about where some of these oppressive relationship scripts come from. I made a list of 7 places: parents and family, birth culture, and adopted culture could be later on, or maybe right away if you were adopted into a different culture than your birth culture. Religion, huge one, of course. Disney, I really think that affects a tremendous amount of our oppressive relationship scripts.
Disney is to blame for so much.
Disney. Movies and television.
You just get married and then you live happily ever after.
Right? And the 6th and 7th are our community, like our closer knit community. Mine would be the sex positive community, and my house, my intentional community, Hacienda Villa. And 7 would be, I think, our partner or partners, right? So their scripts that they're running can be an oppressive script for us. Can you think of anything else that keeps us caged in paradigms that are not of our own making? I thought I covered the bases here, but if I missed anything.
Trauma?
We could be running scripts.
I mean, no, yeah, that definitely applies, because if you've had it wired into your brain by trauma that, for example, abuse is indicative of love, that can be incredibly impressive. I've been with people who struggled with that, and it was terrible watching them try to just even allow themselves to be loved.
Might that not go under the parents and family?
Yeah,
it can override it almost.
I think it's a specific kind of conditioning that comes from having an abusive dynamic with your parents.
Yeah.
Don't make
and
that
it may not even be your parents. You may have had a conditioning with your parents, your friend, your community, and then you have trauma that overrides. You could have even been in a loving space, and trauma can literally take over all of that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, because when I try to trace something back, I don't have a lot of clear memories before the age of 12, so it's hard to trace things back. But I feel like my parents both loved me a lot and told me and expressed it, and I'm like, what, sort of sometimes I'm like, where does this come from? Where does this where's this issue coming from? So
Big
I
question.
want to talk about some of the oppressive messages that we've each received. And here are some that I've received. You don't want to have children? You haven't met the right man yet. From my mom. Marriage is between two people. From my American culture. Many other cultures, but particularly mine is American. You can only romantically love one person at a time. Also from my American culture. I was, I think, fortunate enough not to receive religious programming in this, well, in any realm really, because I wasn't forced to go to Sunday school or Catholic school. So that is one oppressive messaging that I don't have in my programming. You are meant to fall in love with a prince and live happily ever after. Disney. P.S. What is ever after? As though relational happiness were this permanent state.
Right.
We're just like, anyway. And then I actually I intended to write down one or two from movies and TV, but then a ton started coming up. So when sex is right, it is wordless.
Ooh.
Say that again.
Yeah.
Right? It's wordless. You don't need to talk about it. You don't need to communicate. You don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
They
right?
should be able to read your mind and just naturally, automatically do everything right.
Orgasms.
Yeah.
Happens on its own, just like.
A woman can orgasm quickly from thrusting.
Well,
let's all do it.
Do it, Sammy, do it.
Yeah, but I actually can orgasm quickly from thrusting. So that's not a myth. It's just like, I'm sorry. My husband just said, I'll attest to that.
Obviously, many people with vagina cannot.
Yeah. I know. And I couldn't always. It's a new thing that started happening when I was in my 30s that I don't know, something changed in my physiology. And I realized I'm very fortunate and I'm humbled and I apologize.
Don't apologize.
That's interesting that something shifted for you. Did it shift when you had a particular partner to go deep with? No? Just
no. Yeah, it shifted. It shifted at the same time as all of my desires and my sexuality shifted. There was some kind of a hormonal thing that happened. I'm pretty sure it was like hormonal and physiological, and a lot changed, and I became orgasmic in a way I never was before.
That's amazing.
That's beautiful.
It's wonderful. I'm very happy it happened.
Let's celebrate you.
Oh my goodness. I have two beautiful women celebrating my orgasms. Thank you.
Fuck yeah. Right now I feel like my kingdom for a hair tie. Okay, no, I found it. Okay.
I have one. Can I throw it to you?
I'm good.
I'll
Got
get
it.
one.
Got it. Okay. So another from movies and TV. People don't need to talk about anything like STIs or their emotional state or what having sex might mean to them before they have sex.
Mm-hmm.
Because I actually cannot recall a time when I've seen a safer sex conversation or an emotional safer sex conversation on screen, on TV, which is amazing considering all the things that have been shown on screen in all the movies and all the TV and all the land, you know. Surely there's one or two, but the fact that I can't name 10 off the top of my head is a problem.
Yeah.
We don't have representations of that. Another one is
push, but it's not deep. It's just sex, but like on a very surface level sex and nudity and like a lot of it, but none of it goes like deep, like your bag.
You mean in the TV and movie representations?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff, if you want to grab that spot, Brian isn't here yet, and anyone can grab a spot.
Join us. Don't be shy.
Okay, maybe he's shy. He can be shy. That's okay. He doesn't have to join. So a few other messages from film and TV. Sex isn't messy. It looks so clean. Doesn't it just look so clean on cat? They're just like fall into bed and the sheets are clean and like everything's unwrinkled.
Never messes up your makeup.
There's no juices, doesn't mess up your makeup. Like,
Right.
People are constantly having sex in one position and it's over in like 30 seconds.
Right.
And very rarely do we get anything more than that. It made me think growing up that that's just how it was.
Right. Sex scenes are really quick. They're either they like fall into bed and then like you close the door and that's it, or they fall into bed. Hi, Kalina.
Hi, Kalina.
Hi.
Some passionate looking and then it's done.
Want to join?
All done.
Hey guys, my husband Johnny is gonna chill with us.
Hooray! Welcome, Johnny.
Good to see you again, Lila. How are you?
Great. Some other messages I've gotten from film and TV. If a man likes you, he'll chase after you holding a boombox over his head.
I like that.
You did that, right?
I like that.
A guy that doesn't take no for an answer, you're supposed to find really romantic and endearing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like if he hangs out outside your house day and night without your permission after you've told him multiple times I'm not interested, it's because it's romantic.
Right. Stalkerish behavior is romantic, says basically all of our 80s films, which I love. And then I look at from a lens of just human decency, and I'm like, this is horrible. I still love them, but it's kind of
find stalkerish a little sexy sometimes.
It can be.
I have a dark side that I like to be stalked a little bit. Like I don't.
I'm gonna agree with you on that one too.
Like I like obsessive love. I think.
Whoa, really? Ooh, thank you for bringing in the darkness. Liz says she never understood the romantic stalker.
But you're also saying that that's something you like. This is not something that is being done to you when you've explicitly said no.
Yeah, no. So there has to be,
specifically saying
it's not non-consensual.
I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's different if you're just like, hey, I'm kind of like feeling this.
It's
versus this person needs to leave me alone. I am scared to leave my place. Like,
oh my God.
So would you express that beforehand? Would you be like, hey, so I really enjoy a little obsessive stalking. So if you could just like show up at places unannounced and
now that it's hot, his birthday's coming up. So
naturally.
I'm gonna stop the fuck out of you, baby.
Well, it's like anything else. I mean, like going back to like the 80s films and things like influencing how we perceive love and relationships. I mean, I think a lot of people get the wrong idea from those sorts of things. They can either be cool ideas, different dimensions and things you can explore, but people seem to just get this sort of like these blinders on like, this is the way it is. This is the way it is. Yet it could be a garden, or you can just be focusing on one aspect of the garden.
And I think a lot of that is that we're getting these messages when we don't know any better. We're teenagers. We're kids.
Yeah.
So we're not good at interpreting the subtle things that could make those moments work in real life.
And those messages become really indoctrinated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the messages are ones that we got when we were really young, whether they were religious ones or parental ones, and they stick. You don't know what's going to stick too. I mean, those are pretty obvious. But, for instance, my mom once told me, you sing through your nose, and I never pursued musical theater ever after. Like,
right.
But everyone in musical theater sings through their nose. That's like the sound. It's true.
So, you never know what's really going to stick. Another thing from movies and TV was that getting into a relationship is when the story ends.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That when you make the commitment, when you have the marriage, when the girl agrees to be with you, is when the story ends. The end.
The end.
The beginning, which is what it really is. Well, I think the message there on what I always got is that marriage is the destination.
Yeah, it's like you won, right? So it's like you won the prize, you won the relationship in game, you are now in
Yeah, and then your life is over.
You don't have to try anymore because you
right.
Right.
life.
Right.
Mhm.
And then you don't have to do anything because you've won. So I wonder
like that's the trope they show a lot currently in media, like movies, TV shows, where it's like, oh, we're married, so we don't care anymore. We don't try for each other anymore. We're just going to sit here and complain about each other until we die. And that's it. And that's what marriage is. And you're like, no.
Yeah, that's horrible.
You found somebody you want to keep trying with them, and you want to keep making it special because you want to keep this connection that you have with this person, that you decided to take this big step. It's not just, well, there's a piece of paper that says that we're stuck together, so I guess that's it, and now that's our life is over. And there is that idea that your life is also over because you're married.
Yeah.
Why?
I think there's the stereotype of marriage being like bad also. Like once you marry, then you're annoyed, and really poor communication, like silly fights.
It's bad for only one of the people there.
Yeah, like someone's always annoyed, like, you know, the typical wife that's annoyed.
If we're talking heterosexual marriage.
Yes, if we're talking heteronormative marriages, it's usually, well, the wife has reached her goal and she got her prize, she got her prey. And the guy is like, oh no, oops.
Oh no, now I'm trapped. My ball and chain.
Right.
It's the whole concept of like, oh, that's it. Now your life is over. Or, you know, the way people talk about it when the marriage is, you know, the wedding is coming up, that they're like, oh, aren't you scared? Like your whole life's over now. And it's like, why?
Freedom is gone.
Is that how we're talking about it?
We just got married, by the way.
Oh, men's lives are over, women's lives are complete, Liz says. That's so interesting. Yeah. I want to invite anybody who is here but not on video to join the chat on the left-hand side of the screen.
Yep, I'm going to pop out so somebody can come in, because Liz, I am 100% agreeing with what you just said. That is so how I perceived it, you know, and how it was indoctrinated into me when I was in previously dating and married, was this whole concept of like, oh, I reached a goal. Now what?
Can you still hear me all right? Some really big music to come in. Okay.
Oh yeah, you're clear.
But I'm going to hop off if somebody else wants to.
I'll stay where I am. Yeah, if anybody else wants to grab that spot, please do. It's nice to have you all here. I wondered if anybody wanted to share some limiting beliefs that they personally or oppressive messages that they personally received. I know Lady and I have talked about don't be a slut.
Yeah. There's the wetness factor that I don't think is addressed even in movies or talked about, or like the warming up phase, that there's this message that women are just ready, that they're like ready for penetration 2 seconds after making out. And no one talks about wetness.
I wrote that here. Women need no lube.
Yeah, like that's like a big, a big.
Where are they reaching for the lube?
Yeah, I actually don't do well with lube, but just wetness in general. Like, let's talk about wetness.
Yeah. Also, we want to talk about the fact that wetness does not equal arousal. That's not a direct correlation. That's I think really important.
I actually thought something was wrong with me for years because I just didn't really get wet, like until
I had that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I would eventually get wet, but it was usually after using spit or lube or something to get things started, and then my wetness would happen. Even if I was warmed up for a really long time, it just wouldn't happen. And I thought that meant there was something wrong with me. Like my partners would think I was less sexy or less turned on, because men are like, you get this idea like men are obsessed with the idea of making you wet. And if you don't get that way, you're, faulty somehow. That was hard for me for a long time until I just was caring.
I don't want to stray too far, but I have been lube shamed by partners. Many partners have said, "Oh, none of my other partners need it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Need that. Actually, I need that. No, you don't. You're fine. No, I need it. Yeah.
Give it to me.
Yeah.
Paulina says she was shamed the other way by a previous partner because she was too wet. It felt like a slip and slide.
Ew.
It's amazing. It's like that "Be a Lady" video. You can never get it right. Like too sexy, don't be too sexy. You know,
Yeah.
be wet, don't be too wet. Like, I can't get any friction.
I just watched that "Don't Be a
Aw.
Lady" video today as well. That was intense, and I loved it.
So good.
Yeah.
So let's dive in a little bit deeper on our topic. I thought, so if we're trying to learn to distinguish what we truly want, what is truly good for us from these messages, we have to know what some options are. Because if we don't, it's like ordering without a menu. Like we have no idea what's out there and what's possible, right? So I thought, let's just talk about some options. For instance, on a spectrum of monogamy to non-monogamy, some options that are perhaps less considered.
It's a
might
little
be-
loud over there. Yeah.
Yeah, they just turned on a boombox, so I gotta move.
Show us around, Lila.
Yeah.
That's actually why we're all here.
I had the good light, but now we're just gonna have to get something else. Okay. Looking for a spot.
Really jealous of your surroundings right now.
Here we go.
Yeah, this is like warming up.
So
The
good light.
anticipation. Perfect.
So, thank you for letting me know that you couldn't hear me very well. So, on a spectrum from monogamy to non-monogamy, some options that I feel like are not often considered are monogamish, something with just a little bit of wiggle room.
And there's a lot of flavors of monogamish.
Plenty, right? And one of them is a hall pass. Like, hey, with this person, I'll give you a hall pass. You can go play with that person. Hall pass. Or some arrangements are like single while traveling. That's something that I've personally experienced. Somebody who was single while traveling, and that was their agreement. Swinging, because I think it's such an outdated term. I don't feel like a lot of younger folks are considering it.
There are actually more than you would think. There's a whole young swingers community that I've recently gotten involved with that's super active, and they have huge events with thousands of people and podcasts, and they're fun.
Right.
I think it's just as fringy as it's always been.
And then asymmetrical relationships. This is something that I feel like people rarely talk about. For instance, a poly-mono relationship where one partner feels more monogamous and is comfortable with that, feels good about it, and the other partner is polyamorous and that feels really important to their expression and their appreciation of life and their identity. So it can be asymmetrical in all different kinds of ways, but asymmetrical relationships are something that I feel like are not often thought of as an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of my partners is he's poly and his other partner is mono. Like that she is just interested in dating him, but she also is aware that he dates other people and is totally fine. And I've met her. Like she's lovely. We've gone out to the movies together. She's really nice. But she's just very happy with just dating him.
Yeah.
But also still acknowledging that he dates other people as well. And that was the first time I had any kind of experience with that kind of dynamic. Because I always just thought like, oh, that would never happen. Like somebody would never feel okay with it. And then you encounter it and you're like, oh, well, there goes that predisposed idea. I should probably not do that.
And it also works for when one, sorry, Lila, go ahead.
Good.
No, it also works when one person has lost libido or doesn't want to be sexually active. So you make an arrangement, right? Yeah. Where it's like, okay, I just want to we have a partnership of relating and being together, but the sex part, you can go on and get it somewhere else. Like I'm not into it for whatever reason. So
there's this idea that our partners have to be exactly like us and that things need to be like even on every level somehow. There's this idea of evenness, symmetry, as you said, but also like, oh, well, if I'm doing this, you have to do it too. Or if I'm not going to do this, you can't do it either. And that's just not really how people or relationships ever actually work in practice.
Yeah.
There's two things that come to mind around that. One is this lover that I had briefly in marriage, and he taught me that, and the thing that he said to me has resonated with me all this time, and it doesn't have to be equal to be balanced.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Which
that.
I had never considered before. I thought it had to be equal in order to be balanced, because that is how scales go. That is, that is justice. I am a Libra. That is how it goes. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, the very first person that I really knew intimately who was in a non-monogamous partnership really busted up a lot of ideas that I had about it. And she was the monogamous half of her polyamorous queer relationship. And she said, so my partner wants to share their love with somebody else, and that is how they want to spend their time. That's their hobby, essentially, is another love. I want to do yoga, and I want time for myself, and I want to, hang out with my friends. And so that's how she chose to organize her relationships.
Mm.
I thought that was fascinating and beautiful. Let me just run through a few other options. I did offer a few other monogamous options. Monogamy with the occasional sex party, cuddle party, sexy social dancing, and platonic dates.
Mm.
I have really romantic experiences with people that we are actually having a platonic, non-sexual relationship with. So platonic romances is something else that I would add to this list. She just keeps raising the level on her boombox. Remember we were talking about boombox? She just keeps cranking it up. Oh my goodness.
Maybe
I think
she's
hear you better.
Swim class or something. Or swim dance. I don't know. Has anybody ever seen the movie 5 to 7?
Yes. I love that movie.
It was actually a gorgeous film, and it is about French affairs and the agreement that the time period from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. is your own to do with as you wish, probably to spend with your lover. These lovers are known but not spoken about. It's an open secret. And that's the way that it goes, right? That is their agreement. So that's another way that has been, let's say it stood the test of time, right? People who are in partnerships with children, they don't want to break up, but they each have their lovers, and they spend this time from 5 to 7 with their lovers. It doesn't have to be from 5 to 7, but you get the
I just want to say that sometimes, my second marriage was an open marriage at the end, and that sometimes one person adapts to the one that feels stronger about it. And it's not always what they want, but they don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of adapt, and it really morphs the relationship. I feel like the minute my husband and I went open, our relationship actually ended. I wanted the openness. He didn't, but didn't want to really.
Don't scare my husband.
It's okay. It's not for everyone. It's making it work. But even in an open marriage, I actually wasn't even that happy, and he wasn't happy. So sometimes even opening it up, you have to really know what kind of openness you want, and because we were don't tell me anything, but underneath it was crumbling. All that, it was like mold on the relationship, and it couldn't hold. It just collapsed eventually. So
yeah, I'm polyamorous and have been for a long time, and we've been talking about this a lot, and we don't have to go too deep into it, but he's not sure if he's totally on board. So for the time being,
it's also illegal for me right now.
Oh yeah,
I'm in the military,
it's illegal for him to be polyamorous or not monogamous at all.
Yeah,
but I because I've been where you were with your ex lady, and it ended the relationship. It 100% ended the relationship. But so my strategy when I'm in relationships I really care about now with that dynamic is to just be like, okay, we're monogamous until further notice. Let's we have to figure out what'll work for us, because I don't want black mold growing in the recesses of this beautiful relationship that we have.
Yeah.
And
I almost wish I would have ended it then. because then it just became weird. Like, so it's better sometimes to let something go than to morph it in or try to fit it into this open poly, whatever. It's just finding your own recipe, and that's the topic, Lila. No, just really connecting to what's important to you.
Yeah, I mean, that title's always fuck with me a lot. Like, it's, you know, I like all these things as options. You know what I mean? That, more than anything else, you know, more of an infinite standpoint of all the different spectrum of it. You know what I mean? Being, I think being one way, you know, as a constant, it kind of doesn't give you the flexibility, you know?
Like over identifying with a particular way of being.
Right. Yeah. Like, you know, amorous.
Yeah, I agree. So many titles. Like, I don't, you know, it's like cheater or like
lady, you're in and out.
Yeah.
The last thing on my list here of things that are potentially not always considered are triads, 3-person relationships, quads, 4-person relationships, and other forms of polycules that can take different configurations. And then, so that's one thing. That's the, you know, the sexual and relational aspect. And then I thought about cohabitation, because I have some non-conventional cohabitation desires. I mentioned on Lady's little video show at one point. So here are some options there. Obviously not all the options, I can't list them all, but here's a few. Separate bedrooms, separate beds in the same room,
Japanese,
separate apartments or houses nearby one another, separate places in different states or different countries that you both share. Sometimes that's called bicoastal. Sometimes for old people, it's called snowbirds, right? They spend the summer in New York and spring in New York, and then they fly down when it gets cold to Florida. I met a woman at the release of the book Advanced Style. Can you hear me all right now?
Yeah, it's a little muggy.
I met a woman at the release of the book Advanced Style who said, I live in New York and he lives in LA and we meet in the middle.
So like what, Nebraska?
I don't know. Colorado? I don't know. I thought it was looking great.
I'll look out for her.
Delightful. You could have a nomadic lifestyle together. Like the two people that I first stayed with when I got here did for, I think, 7 or 8 years together. They just traveled all over the world. One of the people could be rooted in one location and the other person could be nomadic, which, you know, is a common thing for military spouses over time or diplomatic partners, you know. You could live in community. You could live with elders and extended family. So some options in cohabitating. Are there any other options that you're thinking of that I didn't mention?
Well, there's also the option of not having a primary relationship, which I mean, but having relationships.
It's here, solo poly.
Solo poly, thank you. Which I did for years before I met Johnny, and I thought I was gonna be solo poly for the rest of my life. I was very committed because I loved it. It was so much fun. Most of my lovers were long distance, and I would have a few that lived where I live, usually. And the relationships varied in degrees of commitment and longevity, but all were treated with respect. And like I had a great time not having to run every decision by any one person, but still having lots of love and romance and companionship in my life from several different people at any given moment.
Yeah.
And I think that way of living gets sort of blown off as like the lifelong bachelor, or for women, it's way less complimentary. We're the spinster. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or we're just like the cougar, right?
Yeah.
Or the puma,
or it's that you're still seeking, right? The idea is that you haven't found the thing yet, so you're still dating. As opposed to that being a lifestyle that you've chosen for yourself.
Right. And for me, it felt like I chose that lifestyle and I felt very complete in that lifestyle. And the only reason I'm married right now is because I met somebody who was the right fit for that kind of a relationship. And I didn't think that he existed. So actually I'm married to a unicorn.
Well, I was kind of the same too. I was working on cruise ships forever, like for about 15 years, and just kind of came with what went. People would always say things like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm just having a great time. I'm traveling, living my life, doing my thing. It doesn't have to be a certain way. And it was great. And my roommate and music partner, Sean, he was amazing too. And we would have conversation about this. We were kind of in the same place with it. We just like to have fun. We were musicians and we were meeting people constantly. So it was really tough. And we tried keeping relationships on land, but we were nomadic and people tried, you know, and it was tough. Always fell apart. So it was just.
I recently heard that a lot of people have their ship girlfriend or ship boyfriend and then their partner back home.
Yeah, they most of the time they're not telling anyone that the other one exists. That's the problem.
I know.
Yeah, it's not open. You know what I mean? It's
not. It's not ethically non-monogamous.
Yeah. I worked in resorts for a long time and it's similar. You're away and you're constantly dating people. But I was actually very happy when I divorced my second husband, right? It was like, okay, I'm going to just live an open life because relationships haven't worked and I was like a serial cheater. So I was like, I don't want to keep cheating or lying. So let me just be happy like this. And I was so ready to just do that forever. And then I find a guy who just wants monogamy. And they're like, oh, okay. So, so I was totally happy. I didn't need him. I was so complete and happy living like that forever. But he just appeared out of nowhere. Like you say, I didn't think he existed. So I was very happy. And I hate it when people make a judgment around that. Like, you'll change your mind, almost like getting pregnant. Oh, you'll change your mind. So I'm glad I found him, but I was complete without him. Complete.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what's important, I think, is to be in love with yourself and life.
You are a complete person. You are trying to find someone else who is a complete person. You are not halves of something that you desperately need to cling to something for the sake of feeling whole. You feel whole, and I feel like you attract the kinds of people you should have in your life, both romantically, platonically, the new family that you build, but you have to, that all comes from a place of, I am whole as I am. I am complete myself. I want you to compliment me. You are not here to complete me.
Thank you. Speaking of messages we get from movies that are toxic and oppressive.
Yes, that you are half a person.
You complete me.
Other half, but I feel like all that does is make you feel like you have to be with someone, and you end up making a lot of wrong choices out of that feeling of, well, I have to be with somebody because then I'm not a complete person. I'm always going to be in this feeling of want and need, and no.
Well, you make people nervous too when you're happy and single. You make people really nervous.
Oh God, yes. I enjoy that so much post-divorce. I make so many people in relationships nervous simply by existing.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
So many people in my world took a big sigh of relief when they found out I was getting married.
Me too.
Everyone assumed that meant that I was going to be monogamous for the rest of my life. And a lot of those sighs got re-inhaled when I started telling everybody that that's not the case.
I have some things that I want to address, okay? I have some things that I want to address, and we're running out of time. So I think we're all in agreement that it can and it probably will shift over time, right? And if we're brittle about our relationship style or structure, we're likely to self-impose a lot of suffering and impose a lot of suffering and pain on our partner or partners as well. And I've been thinking about the lyrics from Ani DeFranco's song, Buildings and Bridges. Buildings and bridges are meant to bend in the wind. To withstand the world, that's what it takes. All that steel and stone is no match for the air, my friends. What doesn't bend breaks. What doesn't bend breaks. And I've been singing that to myself quite a lot lately, right? What doesn't bend breaks. Why would we insist that what we want now and the agreements that work now will be what we want later on, or the agreements that will work later on? It makes no sense. It doesn't exist anywhere in nature that like things are static and, you know, it doesn't, It is not the way that I see anywhere in the world of anything. And I wanted to bring up that Ani DeFranco actually was a kind of a queer icon for a while, and she married a man, and she got a tremendous amount of flack for it. She got a ton of shit for it from the queer community because they're like, you traitor, you changed your mind, you're an imposter, blah, 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 blah. And this who she, fell in love with, wanted to have a marriage with, wanted to have a child with. That's the life she wanted. It doesn't make her queer identity invalid, so it's like, really, not only are these messages coming in, but the messages are coming in like, also, you can't change it, so, okay, great, you're gay. So now you can't marry a man,
Mm-hmm.
so like so you've defined yourself, and now that's all you can do. I wanted to talk about some options in relationshiping with children real quick. I'm just going to run through them. No children ever.
Yay!
Step parenting. Relationshiping with a person or polycule, but not with their child or children, which is, I think, not often talked about. That you don't have to be involved in your partner's children's life.
Yeah.
You don't have to be.
I've done some of that, and it was great. I was so happy they never tried to make me like meet their kids.
Taking a mentor or a friendship role with a partner's kids. Blending families, fostering, adopting, being a surrogate, treating your pets like your children, which I see a lot of New York people do.
Sabrina, you have dogs, or
I have a dog.
They put leashes. You see that thing, right? In the freaking theme parks.
He said, or treat your children like your pets. My mother put me on a leash to go through airports when I was 4. I swear to God.
No, she did not.
Ah.
I'm so sorry.
She did.
Yikes. Living in a community that raises children as a village.
That'll be easier. Oh my God.
Dog children.
I like the village idea so much.
Yeah.
Having biological children and raising them in a nuclear family. Having biological children who are raised by others. It's also something that happens, and also a possibility. So I wanted to talk about what might we make agreements about in our romantic relationships, but put them in the comments because we don't have time. So,
dynamic group here.
Yep. I want to talk about ways that we can learn to tell what we really, really want, since that was the topic. Yeah. So I have a list. You can hop in with new things to add to this list, and I hope you will. The first one I wrote was meditate on different options. Read one piece of this list that I created, or a list that you find or that you write. Sit with it, close your eyes, be quiet, and become aware of the sensations in your body as you think about engaging in that kind of relationshiping. Because I think a lot of people are just disconnected from feeling somatically in their system, how they express in their system. Observe the associations, judgments, feelings, and desires that come up when thinking about these ideas, which is a different experience from observing the somatic experience in the body. And then write them down, journal. Share that with friends. Unpack it with a therapist. Do parts work. And this is something I was hoping Lady would talk about.
Yeah.
You talk about parts work.
Hi, Hola. So I believe it's Ann Cornell, and there's a book called Focusing, and different people do different ways of doing parts work. And I think even in Tara Moore's book, Finding the Inner Mentor is parts work in a way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's about creating a little bit of distance from your parts, from the part that feels shame, or the part that wants to go sleep with someone else, or the part that wants to be chosen, or the part that wants
to have a big wedding.
Yes.
I want a small wedding, but you know what I mean.
Oh my God. I had 3 weddings. I'm done. No more weddings.
No more weddings. She says now.
I Even though I was just
know.
There's a part of me that doesn't want any more weddings.
There we go.
I definitely don't want any more weddings. One is
What
good.
lady led me through was that you give this part a name, a voice, you speak from this part. She said, well, what would that part have to say about you, shutting the door on it or trying to make it be quiet, So doing some parts work could help. I also have on this list, hire a love coach, a relationship coach, an erotic blueprints coach. Lady is one. Annie Lala is another. These are folks I've had on the podcast. There are many others who are doing this work. Sean Galanos, if you're interested in working with a man.
And there's some shame, social shame around that. I think therapy is more acceptable, a personal trainer, a business coach, but somehow sex and relationship is like, no, I'm not broken, we're okay. And there's a little bit of shaming around getting a coach. Like, it's not as accepted as therapy. I think just broke through. That is like, okay, it's okay to have a therapist.
Yes. I think another message we get is with sex and love, you're supposed to know how to do it. You're supposed to just know already how to do it. And how can we possibly, especially if we weren't loved in a way that felt healthy, how can we possibly already know how to do it? So why wouldn't we hire a coach? When I was in a relationship with my ex, Alex, I said, well, I think we might need to go to some therapy together. And he was like, don't you think it's a little soon for that? Because we were maybe, 6 months into a relationship. I was like, we're having problems now. Why would we wait until we are in the death throes? When we hear the death rattle, no wonder relationship therapy is where relationships go to die. If you're going there when your relationship is basically already brain dead.
Yeah.
And done.
Esther Perel says people go to therapy 7-10 years too late sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I'm in a group right now playing in a band with a bunch of dudes who are a bit older than I am. And a lot of them have been married for years. And they're all going through divorces right now. And I asked, when did you know it was turning sour? And they said, oh, it sucked for about 10 years. And I'm like, 10 years? Yeah, it's just been, 10 years.
Decade of your life.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Liz has a recommendation. She says, if you like parts work, the book You Are the One You've Been Waiting For is an excellent read. So I'm going to put that on my reading list.
I love that title.
That's great.
There is a diagram that I wanted to recommend to anybody curious about the myriad different styles and ways that one can be non-monogamous. It's by Franklin Vo, who wrote More Than Two or co-wrote More Than Two. And it's a huge diagram. And you might want to peruse that with a partner or partners and see the things that you are drawn to. You can also do that solo. I'm wanting people to dream up and write down their ideal relationship structure and constellation, especially when they think that it's too much to ask for, nobody would ever go for that, or my partner could never agree, I want people to dream and to crystallize that in words, what they really, really love, what they really are interested in.
You just articulated something I've heard so many people say who came to me saying, I would love to have something a little more open, but my partner would never, I couldn't even bring it up with them.
I couldn't even bring it up. Yeah, a lot of people say I couldn't even bring it up.
And
I could never even say it. You can never say it. Jeez, then you're not expressing a huge part of yourself to your partner, and that's going to probably fester and cause
but I think we're used to compartmentalizing ourselves. It's like we're used to editing. We're used to, okay, this box is accepted at school. This part of me is accepted at a party. I don't know. We're used to be so fragmented. That's why we're not feeling connected. And it's like, no, this is all of who I am. And I want a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I think the more we can accept all of it, all the parts, because we're all want that. And we're all pretending that it's like, okay, this is the most digestible part. Let me be this thing for 7 hours. And then when I get home, I can be myself. It's really, you're dying slowly like that as well.
Right. And before you even think about sharing it, if you write it in such a way that it's only for you, you're the only one who's ever going to see it. So you can really share those, especially something like maybe you want something asymmetrical. Maybe you want to be polyamorous, but you just wish you could have a monogamous partner, but you just think nobody was ever going to want that, ever going to go for that. Actually writing that down you know? And then I had a few other things on my list. Spend some days in silence. Maybe do a Vipassana meditation, like deep self-connection. See what arises. You don't even have to meditate on it. Something will probably come up as you sit in silence. Experiment with deliberate celibacy to clear your energy, to clear your mind, to clear those feel-good chemicals that can confuse your inner voice and sound like your inner voice. Hi, John. Experiment with, and this is related but separate, deliberate singlehood, right? Because you could be single and not celibate. So experimenting with, I'm not going to relationship right now. I'm going to relationship just with me for X amount of time. I know that John has done something like this at one point, right?
Yeah, this is true. I called it celibacy at first for a year, almost a year, and then I call it solo poly now. If you go to that chart.
Yes. I will post the link after the chat ends to that Franklin Vo chart. Engage in esoteric practices that help you connect with your intuition. Because if you're confused about what you want or whether you want what you think you want, likely you are disconnected from this sometimes quiet, smaller, calmer internal knowing. So you may need to do some things that connect you with whatever you want to call it, source, spirit, the esoteric, that which is not seen. It could be tarot cards, it could be astrology, whatever it is. I don't think it really matters. The medium, it just matters that it means something to you and it allows you to get a bit quieter and tune into actual desires. Do some work around, and I know Lady does a lot of this work, releasing limiting beliefs and replacing them with affirmations. Untangle what you think you deserve from what you desire. Yeah. So for instance, I have a limiting belief, and I this is one I'm letting go of right now, right in Bali, right as we speak. And my limiting belief is it is hard for me to find men that I'm attracted to. Not actually true. It's not hard. Another one I have is it is hard to find a match for me, and that's one I'm still working on. That's one I'm still working on releasing, but I can counter it. I've been doing this cacao ceremony, right? And we share limiting beliefs, and then we say release, and then we share ones that we want to replace with, and we say yes. So getting it into the system.
And I want to add to that, Lila, Dr. Joe Dispenza works phenomenal with this, and he has a great book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, because there's these patterns that we identify as ourselves, little things that we keep repeating on, and they're just creating the same past reality. And it's not just about thinking. It's about emotional frequency. You can do mantras and say, I want this forever in your head. But if you're emotionally in doubt, fear, not enoughness, shame, guilt, it is your emotional frequency that creates and not your thoughts. So getting really deep into embodiment, I think a lot of us know a lot. And we're like, I know that. Yeah. But how much are you embodying consistently?
And what are some practices of embodiment?
So it is through meditation, and it's feeling that you already have it, because I don't have a connection, or I don't have a man that I'm attracted to. There's an energy of I don't have, that is like scarcity. And tuning into gratitude, tuning into what would it feel like to have what I already want? Because your system needs practice in feeling something. If it has never felt it, it's hard to really create it. So it's giving an opportunity to not only imagine, and this is, I think, the biggest trick, is believing. And there's a ton of research on placebo effect and all of that. We sometimes imagine without belief, and some people can call it faith. If you're not all in on your belief, then you're gonna keep getting something opposite from what you want. So it's giving yourself permission to feel the gratitude of already having something. And that's tricky because there could be a voice in your head saying, you don't really have it. What are you talking about? We don't have it. So it's kind of lowering the voice of that inner critic, and then really saying, what would it feel like in connecting to that? And that takes some practice, and it could be a little frustrating when you don't see it straight in front of you. Does that make sense?
I understand that meditation, but I don't see how that's embodiment. That doesn't sound like embodiment to me.
Yeah, so it's feeling. For example, I wanna find a lover that's really committed to me, and we're in love and everything, and there's hot sex and connection. That's a thought. What would it feel like to have it? Oh my God, I am so grateful. So it's connecting to gratitude, feeling gratitude, and it's hard to feel gratitude when you don't have something. So it's kind of like counterintuitive, but the emotion of gratitude, the frequency of gratitude is what gets you to embody, to feel.
I can imagine people saying that it's like you're tricking your body.
Your body has been tricked anyways to think that it's not possible. You're untricking your body.
See, yeah, no, I've seen a lot of the same research, I think, that you're referencing, lady, as to the power of belief and how it changes the way we approach the world, and then can change how we approach opportunities that come our way. Because if you can't, by embodying a belief that you can have something that you don't currently have in this particular moment in time, by imagining it and letting yourself feel what it would feel like to have it, you foster a deep visceral belief that it can happen. And then when you go out into the world and you have opportunities to meet people, you're coming at it with the belief of it can happen rather than the belief of this never happens to me.
So and it's already happened.
I think I have something that is aligned with that on my list. Actually, I want to go to Margarita's comment. She says, I don't think that you can awaken a real sensation of something you haven't had before. I think there's great value to this system, how I am understanding it, but it's not based on somatic embodiment. She's done a lot of study in trauma and somatic embodiment.
Yeah. I actually think that's the trick. It's almost like that's the key. I don't know if there's a part in the Matrix where they asked the Oracle, how did you know? And she said, I believe. That believing becomes knowing. And if you look up any research on placebo, the way placebo works, it is truly believing something to the point that it could affect your physiology. So it is possible, but it's crossing the road, crossing the bridge of like, this is not real, and it's a leap of faith.
John, can you calm down for a second so Margarita can cam up? I'd like to hear her thought on this. There are a few more things on my list, and then I want to hear what Margarita has to say about this. So do a guided meditation visualization. So it could be a gratitude one, right? It could be a thank you. It could be led by somebody that, that leads you through, a journey into, a desire room and what you see there and stuff like that, right? There are 3 books I wanted to recommend. We have 2 minutes on the clock. Read Relationship Agreements, read Designer Relationships, and read The Jealousy Workbook. These are 3 books that I think would be incredibly helpful in figuring out what we want versus what we think we want. You can also take a look at a kink survey or questionnaire. Those are incredibly detailed. I especially love how they say like hard limit, soft limit. Oh, do you have one right there? Linked, a polyamory zine. Do you recommend that?
Ooh, I'm going to submit to write for
so
them.
So many books. Is there
Sex Magic? So I think that's like what Lady was talking about. So practicing sex magic is either self-pleasuring or engaging with somebody else in such a way that it is intentionally towards something, right? So it's like creating a ritual around sexuality so that the experience of pleasure is linked to something in your brain, like maybe meeting this match, I will type up all the resources.
The Tara Moore book, that inner critic, that is connecting to a future self, if you see the link there.
Margarita, you have 30 seconds. Can you weigh in?
Let's stay.
I just think that from the perspective of the work that I do, I understand. I think it's a great practice to have, and it's part of the top-down approach, which is very valuable. I think there is also a risk in excessive magical thinking or in expecting or assuming that we know what things feel like that we have never experienced before, because that might create a loop such that when we are in that situation, what we feel might be different and we might not accept it or want it or understand that that's actually what it is. So if you've never had the experience of being loved or being loved well, we can make it up and we can imagine it and we can desire it and we can quote unquote manifest it to some extent, but we might not know what it actually feels like, even when it comes.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we would want to unwrap and dance with and tangle with longer than we have at this moment. So here's a few other things that I had on my list. And then I had a list of tools. And we got to get to the tools. So interview people with relationships you admire or read about them. You know, hear directly from people who have what you would like or have something that actually looks good to you. I haven't had a lot of experience talking with people who have something that looks good to me. So I think that would be helpful. And then we kind of touched upon this, but there's a woman named Logan Ury. She does work around relationships, and she has a phenomenon that she calls relation shopping, right? Where you go on Tinder and you're like, this age to this age, this height to this height, no more than 5 miles away from me, and you have all these parameters. But let's also hold an awareness that what we imagine we want might not actually be what we want in practice. And things are static on paper, and things are static on your Tinder profile as you expand your age range or whatever. But things are infinitely dynamic between humans, and it might not look like what you thought it was going to look like, and it still might be what you desire anyway. So I wanted us to think that you go to the store looking for a yellow bikini, and you might end up really, really happy with a red polka dot one. Yeah.
There's so much to be said for that.
Like it? Okay, whatever.
No, it's so true. There's this pop culture idea that you need to write a really specific list of all of the qualities that you must have in your life partner. Yeah. And then that magical person that you defined on paper is going to come to you. And I just think it's bullshit.
It's limiting.
Like people, yeah, it's limiting. People can really surprise you. Like, did I ever think I was going to get married? No. Marry somebody who was in the military? Definitely not.
I didn't thought I'd be in the military either. Okay, we'll get married.
If I had a checklist like that, I would have disqualified Johnny the second I found out he was going to be joining the army.
I've been trying to dismantle the specifics, the details, the data from that list and distill it down to the essence. And I came to 3 things that I shared with Margarita, and that I want to have really mutually hot sex. I want to have mutual admiration, and I want to really, really enjoy their company. And she said, wow, that's a lot. And I was like,
apparently I have very low expectations on my romantic partners.
Oh God, you can have it all.
Because that, it was good to distill it to what was underneath those parameters. Like I want him to be taller than me. I want him to be whatever. Right. Like, actually, I really just want hot chemistry, mutual admiration, and to love their company.
Connecting to the feeling and not the specifics.
So some tools that I have, and you may have some more, and I would love to wrap up with tools that people can use. One comes from Philip, who is the 6th episode of my podcast, 7th episode, and it's called I Like, I Wish, I Wonder. It's something that you can do with your partner. They do it weekly, and they're like, oh, I like that we, had a Thursday night sex date. I wish that we had more time to do it and I wasn't so tired. I wonder if next week, if we could give ourselves a sex date, or whatever whatever that might be.
Fun idea.
And so it's a beautiful and simple way to check in. It actually comes from an architectural crit system. I wish, I wonder. Then there's something like the quarterly review or the monthly review or however often review, as suggested by Eric Cardos in Relationship Agreements, one of the books that I recommended, that you can set agreements that feel right and then choose at what intervals to check back in with them and see what needs to be adjusted, what needs to be shifted, and maybe what you've outgrown or what no longer needs to be there, or what you have now learned because of issues that have come up needs to be there. And then the last one that I had as a tool is creating new rituals together. Because I think we are, as a culture, very starved for ritual, and yet many of us are rejecting the rituals of our religion that we were brought up in, or the culture that we were brought up in. And so I'm thinking, like, what if we approached this with a kind of 12-step mentality of take what you like and leave the rest. Take what really resonates for you. For instance, from Catholicism, lighting candles, and from Judaism, lighting candles, I find to be really powerful. So, I can keep that. I like singing together. I think that's incredibly connective and spiritual, so I'll keep that. And then dismiss whatever insults your soul, to quote Walt Whitman, and create new ways of ritualizing, of doing something in a special way with great intention. For instance, a conscious uncoupling ceremony. Why don't we have breakup rituals? Why don't we have something that acknowledges the end of a beautiful thing, if it was a beautiful thing, and the transition of it into something else, witnessed by a community who witnessed it when it started? What if we had weekly commitment ceremonies or monthly freedom ceremonies? What if we created our own sex magic rituals? So these are the tools that I thought of. And if you have any others, jump on in.
This time we have. So with my lover, we eliminated all holidays. Christmas, birthday, Valentine's, they don't exist. We create every day random holidays. So we spent 3 days celebrating Christmas last week. So it takes away the predictability and it gives you room to be natural and celebrate his birthday 50 times. Valentine's.
I'm taking myself to a different part of the club in order to write this down.
I love that, because holidays are so forced and there's so much pressure to make it special and get the right gift, and
it's weird. I'm never inspired on any holiday to do what I'm supposed to do. I want to be with you on a random day. I want us to cuddle all day, like really, and that really gave us a lot of room for spontaneity and to be really inspired action. Not like, okay, now it's Valentine's and now I have to do all these weird things that are just random. So just taking away all the rules and every day showing up as, how do I want to be in love with you today,
One thing that Johnny and I have been doing recently, especially around having difficult conversations, and our only issue that we had difficulty on is that I'm so solidly polyamorous and he's not sure, and doesn't really want to identify with one thing, but definitely currently doesn't have an interest in other partners. Is we're giving ourselves the permission to have our feelings and validate our own feelings. Because one thing that was killing us at the beginning was that he didn't feel comfortable even expressing that he wasn't comfortable with me being polyamorous, because I'd been so clear about it from the beginning. And so he was like, well, she said that's what she was, and now I have to be okay with it. And it stopped him from even expressing himself, which caused conflict that didn't need to happen if he, felt comfortable telling me how he really felt. So I had to realize that I needed to work harder to create an emotional safe space for him and be a lot gentler with the way I talk about it. So creating that space and letting each other know, no matter what you feel, it's valid. Yeah. No matter what it is, there's no emotion that's off limits. There's no thought that you can't express. I'm going to love you no matter what is really, really helpful. And then also, after having moments of conflict and having moments of intense conversations, once things are calmed down, conducting little surveys, like, okay, so how did I do well in this argument? And where could I have improved?
Oh, yeah. Lila, you're mute. We can't hear you. I think she was saying something.
Oh, yeah, Lila, you're muted. Unmute.
Okay, hello.
Yeah.
I
So
said,
we've been doing these little,
that's great. I would call it like downloading
yeah,
surveys. That's
like,
great.
like customer feedback. But it's actually really helpful to gauge, like, okay, so next time we have a conversation like this, I'm going to take this insight you just gave me and phrase these things a different way or speak in a different tone of voice to make it easier for you to hear me.
Yeah.
I did that with somebody as a sex post-mortem.
What do you mean?
Well, what went well, and what could be improved.
Yeah,
That was great.
It's right after.
What?
You did it right after you had sex?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. We didn't give it a little time.
Because it's fresh, right? It's like, oh, I really, really like that you alternately fingered me and then fucked me. That was amazing.
Oh,
and
yeah. Let's talk about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Margarita, I was wondering if you had any tools for somatic embodiment, for feeling into your actual wants, uncovering true desires as opposed to the programming in your trauma work and stuff. No? You shake your head? No?
No, I shake my head. I don't know. That's why I didn't jump on until now. Because I think it's just really hard for me. And I've been personally struggling with it for a while, as you know, and with work and all of that. Is just, sometimes, sometimes the conditioning is there and we know it. Sometimes we don't know it's there. Sometimes what we feel is conditioned in a way that we can't know. Sometimes it's real. The fact that it's a conditioning doesn't mean that it's not real. The fact that we want something that on a rational basis we don't want doesn't mean that we want it less or that it's less valid. Like Samia was saying, everything is valid.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking about the possibility of interviewing your friends. Like, for instance, I could ask you, Margarita, what am I not seeing about what I actually desire?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that I don't think I could say what other people fuck. I don't even know what I know, what I want. How do I know what other people want? Like, I could tell you
yourself.
Yeah, but I could tell you, it seemed to me that you were happier after having that thing as opposed to after having that thing.
Yeah.
Right? When we had, tea and fucking cupcakes, after you met that guy, you were happier. After you met that other guy, not so happy. So maybe that guy is closer to what you want. Right?
I don't remember which guy, but
yeah, no, it's just an example.
But I think that's valuable feedback, because if we're trying to get a look at our blind spots, who has an angle of our blind spots, but the people who are closest to us and our therapists, right? Would we be so lucky to have them?
I would say that spending time with strangers is actually sometimes better because they don't know you, and you can give yourself an opportunity to be parts of yourself that you may not be so comfortable with. So strangers, or being around people that you don't feel you have to edit yourself. So just checking in. Who am I around and how much of myself can I really be? When you travel, it also gives you an opportunity to get to know like a different part of yourself. So sometimes I think the people that know us actually limit us more because they have this preconceived notion of who we are. So I like strangers. I like travel just to be like, let me experiment talking about this. Like you say, Samia, maybe your lover can be like, I want to talk about how I'm not comfortable with this poly thing, and maybe you can like talk to a stranger for like 30 minutes about it, and just feel what it feels like to do without any judgment, any kind of preconceived notion or anything like that. And then turning to curiosity with anything, as opposed to doubt, anger, or taking something personal, saying, let's think, can we get curious about what's coming up, or this part of me, or something like that. So those two things, strangers and curiosity.
Well, I think that we're 15 minutes over my time limit. And if you want to stay for a few minutes after, I'll put some things in the chat and we can rotate in and out. But I'm gonna close this broadcast, Relationshipping. Next week it will be 1 hour later, which means it will be 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific, and 11 a.m. in the future in Bali, where I am. So I hope to see you next week. If you have ideas about what you want the topic to be, let me know. And then I just thought we'd end with a little, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. I want to really, really want.
Thank you, Lola. Thank you, everybody.
Good
night.